Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are back discussing movies. It's been a while, hasn't been much yet this year, but this is one of the biggest movies thus far this year in 2025. It is Bong Joon Ho's Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson, Mark Ruffalo, Naomi Ackie, Toni Collette, Stephen Yeun, a bunch of other people. I am one of your hosts for this episode. My name is Darian. I am joined this time by Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
As well as Zach Miller.
How's it going?
Lots to cover with this one, guys.
Yeah.
The big story, I think, for if you're a fan of film, you would know that this movie is directed and written by Bong Joon Ho, an iconic Korean director who his last film won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. The last normal Academy Awards before the world collapsed. It was the 2020 Oscars, right before COVID hit. And it's now been 6 years since we've seen a movie from this creative mastermind. Now, Vinny is a huge fan. I think we're all big fans of Bong's work. Vinny, I think you've seen, if not all of his films, you've seen majority.
I
right?
haven't seen all of them. I still have yet to see Mother,
Okay.
which is like considered his underrated masterpiece, but I've seen everything else.
Okay.
And
So,
Memories of Murder is in my top 4 favorite films of all time.
okay. So he's a favorite director of yours,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
For me, I've seen pretty much all of his American stuff. I've seen the first movie I've seen of his was Snowpiercer, which I feel like was a lot of people's introduction to him, especially American audiences. I've seen Okja, then I loved obviously and saw Parasite, and now Mickey 17 is the fourth one. I want to go back and see all of his Korean movies. Memories of Murder is one that's been on my watch list for quite a while, as has The Host. Zach, where are you at in Bong's filmography?
Yeah. I got most of them. I need to see Mother and I need to see Okja. And is there another one before that I'm forgetting?
Have you seen The Host and Memories of Murder?
Oh yeah, I've seen The Host. Yeah. The Host is good, and Memories of Murder I heard was spectacular. I bought it blind from Criterion, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna regret this, and it was like insane, bro. So I echo the same sentiment with you. That movie is like one of the best thrillers ever, and it's in like a lot of people's top 10s, and it's spectacular. But this one was very different for me. So,
This movie. So I guess we can get into the minutia of kind of what probably happened with this movie first and foremost. I mean, when you have, and you're starting to see it a little bit with the news that trickles out after the Academy Awards, that when a big award show happens and there's a lot of people that get rewarded, usually the next thing is like, what's next for this person? They can't even really revel in the moment. They're like, oh, what are they going to do next? And Parasite was kind of a phenomenon. Again, it was, I think it's the only international feature film to win Best Picture.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And it's still like number 1 highest rated on Letterboxd.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie, obviously. It has an 8.5 on IMDb. When I used to be a high school film teacher, this was a viewing that I had in my diversity in TV and film class for my students. Every single student I had that watched this movie adored it. Even high school kids could relate to the craziness that Parasite was. And that made me really fall in love with him as a filmmaker. So I was anticipating this movie. I know all three of us were anticipating this. That's why we're on the review. Giving the broad thoughts, non-spoiler to start us off, and then we'll get into the spoilers. I was a bit disappointed with Mickey 17. Now, I do think that part of it is that, like I was kind of alluding to with the Oscars thing, like there were probably a lot of opportunities for Bong Joon Ho after Parasite to be like, here's a lot of money, do whatever you want. And I think that Mickey 17 is based on a novel called Mickey 7. And I think it was one of those things where it was a hot novel, a literary piece that he could kind of sink his teeth into. And he wanted to do something with it. Now, the thing for me that's disappointing in the 4 movies that I've seen of his is that it feels the most commercial and it feels the least Bong in a way. And I think that is what I disliked about it the most. I also thought that this was the first Bong Joon Ho movie out of the ones that I have seen in which I thought there were some, not all, lackluster performances. And that's not on him. I think that there was just there was one cast member in particular that I thought it was a little too hammy and it felt like an SNL sketch to me in particular. But having said that, Robert Pattinson, I thought, was great in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought the first half of the film was way stronger than the back half. And it's not a bad movie. I just was hoping for a lot more out of it.
Yeah, I went into this I knew this wasn't going to be Bong's best film.
Mm-hmm.
I think with his English language films, he's a lot more willing to experiment, in quotations, more or less just kind of be more out there. And I knew it wasn't going to be his best film. I mean, it just seemed like he was going to be more fun and more adventurous, more than anything. And I got what I expected, and I personally really enjoyed the film, and because it fulfilled my expectations. And although I do agree this is Joon Ho's most commercial film, definitely his most Hollywood film, it does still have his voice. So I disagree with that, where like I still see a lot of his comedy coming through, which is a big part of even his more serious films like Memories of Murder and Parasite. And that political aspect, all his films are very political and every single one of his films revolves around some sort of class struggle, and usually has a lot of satire, which this film really amps up and hams up. And that might be where we disagree, because I really enjoyed the hammy, funny parts of that political satire. But like I said, I wasn't expecting a perfect film from Bong, and it's not a perfect film. So that's just kind of my broad thoughts of Mickey 17.
Zach?
Yeah, I liked the movie. I thought it was well executed. I thought he did a decent job at building the world and that kind of thing. I think the thing that threw me off was his blend of his humor with the Hollywood style that is incorporated into the film, because a lot of the satire didn't hit for me. Like, a lot of the humor just felt a little too stale in most of the movie. And most of the film too, it just felt unfinished. I felt like most of the film, like 2/3 of it, was just gags about how Pattinson is being replicated and duplicated and going through these odd relationships, but it didn't ultimately build to a major climax to me. And he was really pushing the whole like Ruffalo being in this extremist trying to colonize the planet, but there was less explanation as to why he wanted to do that, other than his own insecurities and his loss on Earth. So he wanted to make his own world. Was he there in the world to mine the minerals? Was he there to like, I know they allude to the whole like make a white planet and that kind of thing, but I felt like that wasn't explored as much. It was just kind of thrown as an offhanded joke, and I was like, oh, was that the actual motivation for the whole plot the whole time? It just felt like the satire was there, but because it was an essential part of the story, it wasn't finished for me. So I think the blend of the Hollywood actors and the humor and the commercialization might not have mixed perfectly with his style of satire to me. But,
I think that I totally agree with everything you were saying in terms of like it still falls in line with what Bong's voice is. And like you said, you were alluding to the fact that his Americanized movies are obvious, or his American films, he does take bigger swings and things like that. And I do think that it still falls into the farce and the allegory of like what he wants to talk about with a lot of his things. I think that Ruffalo's performance in particular for me was one that I was like, it got to a point where it didn't fit. It didn't work for me. Not that it didn't fit. I guess it fit the story, obviously. But there were elements of it that I was like, okay, it was getting a little too much for me. It's like, it actually, when I walked out of the movie, my least favorite film that I had seen of his, not that I disliked it, but the one that I was just like, oh, it's not as good as the other ones for me, was Okja. And after seeing this, it made me immediately want to go back and watch Okja, because I was like, I feel like I felt the same way about Gyllenhaal when I saw that movie. And then I was like, nah, I think I like Gyllenhaal's performance more in that than I liked Ruffalo in this. Ruffalo's like a mixture of Trump and Mussolini and Hitler, and they do it with like a lot of, whether it's a visual gag or it's the way that he's pronouncing his words or it's the veneers that he's wearing. And I think Toni Collette did a better job of kind of balancing the act of the silliness of what the tone of this movie was in some of Bong's movies and the satire, along with the straightness of it. Ruffalo was such a buffoon that it felt like at times to me like Alec Baldwin on Saturday Night Live. Like I was like, there's just moments where I was like, all right, this is a little too much for me. And I love Ruffalo as an actor. And I haven't seen Poor Things. Everyone's like, he's amazing in Poor Things and he does silly really well and it's very different for him. I feel like I'm not in the minority when it comes to his performance in particular in this movie, because I think people resonated more with him in Poor Things, and it was a similar kind of thing. I haven't seen the movie, so I can't speak to it directly, but I know you guys have.
Yeah, it's hard to comment on that. There's a lot of similarity between the two performances in Poor Things and him here. I think I just really liked, albeit feeling like Alec Baldwin, I did like that it's very on the nose that he is Trump. I mean, they have the red hats and they have all that. And that's what I appreciate about Joon Ho, though, is that his ability and his ableness to talk and comment on such things in such high budget, huge scale films, albeit even though it doesn't feel as focused as something like Parasite does, because it's very all over the place with Mickey 17, which I do agree is its greatest flaw. But I don't know, I kind of find it funny. I just like, it had a charm to me where maybe I maybe have a low standard for comedy, but I had a really fun time with not only Ruffalo's performance, but just kind of the whole cast in general. And it had a charm to me that had me at a good baseline of enjoyment throughout the entire runtime.
I think that's fair. Pattinson to me carried the movie. Like I do think obviously other cast members did well. But he is he just radiates something different that a lot of actors don't possess, really, to me. I mean, he's playing dual roles, which is like going to be a trend this year in Hollywood. It's happening with so many movies, including Sinners and whatever else. But I also like the differences between the Mickeys and kind of what he decided to do with 17 comparatively to 18. Their interactions were great. Their relationship with Naomi Aki's character was great. There was another character who I haven't seen before. She plays the other love interest for like the brief moment.
Oh yeah.
And I don't.
Oh, this is
what? Do you remember the character name?
I do not, but very off topic. It gave me
Kai.
The audience,
Kai's the one that died, I think.
Yeah. Oh, Kai.
Oh, is it Kai? Is it the one?
Kai was the lesbian one that was on the
who loses her partner.
Yeah,
and then she like is flirting with Mickey 17, right?
Yeah.
Anna Maria Vartolome. I just want to give a shout out because I've never seen her before in anything, and I thought she was great. She was like that. Like you find like an unsung kind of character in a Bong movie, and to me, she was one that just stood out in terms of like she was kind of going head to head with Pattinson in scenes and Ruffalo in scenes, and I thought that she did a good job. But
yeah, I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about the woman who's kind of advocating for the expendable program, the one with the red hair.
She's good. Holiday Granger in the beginning of the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is off topic comment, really nothing of criticism or compliment, but her character, their relationship reminded me a lot of Makima and Denji from Chainsaw Man. This very controlling, like manipulative, feminine figure over like someone who's very emotionally vulnerable like Mickey, and very childish, which is similar to Makima and Denji in Chainsaw Man. I don't know. I just figured I'd point that out, especially even with the red hair. I don't know. Makima in Chainsaw Man has red hair, like that same shade too.
Yeah. I like when you pull back the references, Vinny. I wish I could dive deeper into it, but unfortunately I don't have the knowledge. Zach, Chainsaw Man, anything?
I got nothing on Chainsaw Man, but
we're gonna have to watch
I'm
it.
gonna echo your comment, Vinny.
Yeah.
Zach, what did you think about Pattinson in general in this movie? And kind of so much of the movie obviously has to go through him. He's the titular character. He's playing the dual roles of Mickey's, and kind of the elements that he brought to both performances, and why you think it worked for the movie.
Yeah. I think Pattinson was he was very spot on to pick for this, because he's got like that build about him. You know, he can go from Batman and how they mask him for Batman to something like Good Time. You know, they can do all this different stuff with him, and he's one of the most he's got one of the deepest ranges of a working actor today, and he's probably on the track to be one of the best ever if he continues with the type of movies that he's picking. So he has that charisma to play the sniveling, insecure Mickey, and then also that really intimidating. I caught his Batman voice a couple times when he was yelling at Mickey, and he was just coming across like a brute, and there's something scary behind his eyes too. And he doesn't have to be a physical menace. He just has to have this evil energy that he can just shoot you a look and it cuts through you. So Pattinson carried the movie for me. The one thing that I will say about Mickey, the character himself, is I felt like the stakes were little to none in this movie, because Mickey and even the villain of Ruffalo, it didn't feel like we were going to lose a whole lot in the situation with how they were masking it and how they masked the characters. Mickey is projected to be this super insecure and useless person. That's kind of his energy the whole time. And I was like, okay, so yeah, that sucks that he would get permanently. Are we going into spoilers?
Yeah, we can go, we can go into spoilers.
Okay. All right. So that would suck that he would get permanently deleted by the end. But then at the same time, I'm like, what does that matter? Because he's not contributing anything else to the Force with super strength or some crazy skill that he has to colonize the farm and make this planet their own. He didn't have the possession trope of I'm gonna lead this group to victory. He's just the dirty work. He's the micro dirty jobs of this movie. He's just doing the dirty work. So I was like, yeah, if you lose him, then what? Okay. He loses the relationship with Nasha. All right. Okay. The stake didn't feel high enough for me. And then the same thing with Ruffalo is because he was so satirized. I didn't feel like he was as strong of a villain. And he's like, I want to colonize the planet. I was like, okay, so what happens if he does succeed? Then it didn't where is it going to go from here? How is it going to build? It didn't feel like these things were gelling together and the stakes were very high. So Mickey himself, because he was portrayed as a useless character, I didn't feel like I was connecting to him fully. It was just because he's the protagonist, I have to empathize with him, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism, because at the same time, especially when you have a character that you don't know where the stakes lie with him, as well as you even agreed. I think the biggest problem with the movie is it just feels scattered. There's a lot of the plot that's kind of all over the place. And even he's a genre bender like Bong, but it feels a little whiplashy, not the movie Whiplash, but you're kind of all over the place. And even with Nasha's character, you go from this thing where you're like, man, they have a real relationship, and then Mickey 18 comes and she's like, I want both of you. And it's what? What do you I get it adds to the funniness of the character. But then you have the moment where Mickey 17 gets tested on, which I think that's a great scene that shows the buffoonery and the ridiculousness of Ruffalo and Toni Collette when they give him the diseased meat. That's just so disgusting. Yeah. It's an awful visual. Yeah. It's what is this dude eating? And then Kai comes to his side, and you're like, oh, are we gonna go with it? She's the only one that actually had care for him, because in that Nasha didn't really give a shit that he was back. You know what I mean? So I think that the biggest thing for me is that I feel like Bong usually has a much more intentional, sharper image of what he wants to tell with his stories, even if he is alluding to something that is bigger. And I think that whether it's socio-political or again, in even the message of Okja, I feel was kind of what the message was at the end of this movie with the creatures. But I thought that's why I think I thought of it when I was walking out, because I was like, man, Okja had a bigger effect on me, that it stuck with me for such a long time. Like, that movie came out in 2017, and I'm still thinking about the impact of like what like animal cruelty means to him and his messaging with that. When with this, it's like they turn it into, again, it's like a sci-fi fantasy like big war thing, and it's like it doesn't hit the same for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really have much to comment on that, to be honest. It's like I'm so conflicted about this movie, honestly, because like I said, I have a lot of like what I recognize as its biggest flaws, like the unpolished nature of it, the kind of scattered nature of it. I also like kind of enjoy it.
You like the energy of the movie.
Yeah, I do like the energy of that too. So it's like a double-edged sword, because I do admit that like there was moments where it almost felt like I was like, okay guys, all right, come on, we can get going now.
Rein us back in.
But when it did happen and it did like whip us around, I was like, oh, I kind of like that though. I kind of like that, you know. I know Pattinson quoted saying that he took a lot of inspo for his character and his performance from anime and like the whips of emotion in anime. And I saw that a lot. I might be biased because I'm an anime fan, but even in the story and just how unhinged it is, I genuinely am having trouble putting my thoughts into words, because it's like I recognize the flaws and I do agree with you, but I think, like you said, there's an energy to it that, albeit not as polished, is really exciting and charming compared to a lot of other Hollywood blockbusters that are coming out with the same budget.
That I would definitely agree with. I think at the same time, regardless of, I mean, this is, again, it's an adaptation of a novel. I actually was just reading that I didn't realize the novel came out in 2022.
Oh wow!
So it's such a recent thing that it's like, I feel like they were searching for a project for Bong, and at the same time, the world shut down for like a year at that point. So whenever they were finding out what to do with him, this novel must have came out, or it was like right before it dropped. Maybe they gave him an advance copy, and he's like, "This is something I'd be interested in doing." And then Warner Brothers was like, "Yep, get it, grab it, whatever we can do with Bong, that's what we want to do." I do want to talk really quick about the budget, and then Zach, we'll go back to you. But so the movie, I think it's made 54 million worldwide so far. The problem with that is that this is an expensive movie, right? It's $120 million. It's budgeted at that. Some are saying it might be $140 million. I actually pulled up an article too that I wanted to read to you guys in terms of there was interesting correspondence between Bong Joon Ho and Warner Brothers when this movie was being made. Apparently a finished cut, his completed cut, was in November of 2023. So now we're in March of 2025. The movie was pushed back. Apparently, I think that Warner said there were warning signs that the film was testing badly. Bong responded by saying that Parasite also didn't test well. So he's like, I don't really care about that. I think the difference in that versus this is that you're talking about a $10 million movie versus a $120 million movie. So I was thinking to myself, and again, big cast, right? You're thinking like Pattinson's going to cost you a lot of money. Steven Yeun is, even since Steven Yeun did Okja, he's risen in popularity, whether it's, again, obviously Walking Dead and Beef and all the other things he's doing. But I don't know, like I'm part of me wishes he wasn't doing something this big. You know what I mean? Because I think that he's such a talented filmmaker. I feel like Ruffalo probably cost him a good amount of money, and I feel like you could have gotten an actor to maybe do it a little bit more nuanced, not as hammy, and it could have been a little better. But Zach, I'm curious on your thoughts on potentially there being conflict within that. They also said that the Warner cut, apparently the alternate cut, tested 10 points higher than Bong's, which maybe could have felt more cohesive. Maybe they cut some time out of the movie, but I'm curious what you guys think about that. And then Zach, if there was anything else in particular that we brought up that you want to talk about.
I think the budget is like, it's high for this movie, but it's also kind of needed for sci-fis too at this point. Like
the visual effects,
it's probably above like what a lot of people would still spend. But visual effects, sci-fi, big actors, like this might be his biggest list of cast too that he's worked with. Maybe with Okja, he has a lot of people too.
And Okja was a Netflix movie, so they didn't really probably care about what the budget was for that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's a lot of animation, right? Am I wrong on that? Or
I feel like it's really only the pig.
Yeah,
right?
the pigs were CGI. Other than that, I don't.
That's a $50 million budget.
Yeah,
that's what it's listed at.
So it was still like live action.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
You haven't seen Okja, right?
No, I haven't seen it. So I think that like you put that budget against this type of movie, I think that works. But maybe it could also just be that like The Host is even a sci-fi drama that he did not have that kind of budget, but he used it to his advantage and he knew where to put those visual effects. Maybe this was also just an overwhelming experience where he had to wear a lot of hats that he wasn't used to wearing. And, you know, you think about Parasite too, with like a family genre. Like there was a lot that nobody knew about Parasite going into it. I didn't know anything. I heard it was getting buzz. I was like, oh, I want to see it. And it on paper, it just looks like a family drama. Something is going to happen to this family. There was hints of classism and stuff from the trailer. So you don't know where that's going to go. You can already tell that's going to be like probably an emotional story. But other than that, you have very little expectations. I think with sci-fi, you have expectations of the world building. You have expectations of an ensemble now. Like how is Ruffalo going to go against Pattinson in the performance? How is Toni Collette going to fit into this? You know, where are they going to go? Like they're trying to space explore. What have we seen that's an original idea? And people are kind of looking at sci-fi under a microscope, especially lately amidst action and superhero films getting a lot of flack. I think people are like, why do we keep spending money on these kind of movies? So people are kind of a little bit more hyper focused on criticizing stuff like this. And I'm definitely one of them too. Like I want something that's original. Was this movie wholly original? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean it wasn't bad. You know, or it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a bad movie is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. But it still had points where I think that they could have improved on. You know, I don't think that the budget was what killed the movie. I also do think Warner Brothers is in the business of burning movies too and burning filmmakers. So if they had a hand in the mix too, that could be. But I know their studio management has put too much influence on big filmmakers. They literally pushed Christopher Nolan out the door for Oppenheimer. They've gotten way in the mix on DC in the past. So it's possible that maybe him working with a big studio after being a Best Picture winner and a 5-year gap, or about 5-year gap, that could be. So I don't know. Yeah. But
you have anything?
No, not really on that. I think it was well put, Zach. Yeah, I don't really have much else to comment on that.
I'm trying to think where we can go from here in terms of the story. I mean, the movie, like we said, I just feel like a big part of, and again, I don't dislike the movie either. Like I said, I really like Pattinson's performance in it. I think there are really good moments of humor within the movie. I actually liked that. Now that you tell me about the anime thing, I've seen a little bit of anime, obviously nowhere near as much as you, but I could see how inspired it is. There's even like, I really like little moments of humor, like when you start to see how him and Timo, Stephen Yeun's character, they like get into that mess. And they're like, we had a macaroon shop that wasn't successful. And it's like those little bits that I think really work. And that's why I think the first half of the movie, like the world building, actually was probably my favorite part of the movie. Especially in terms of like learning about everybody's jobs on the ship. I thought that I'm a big fan of Mindhunter as well, but Cameron Britton, who plays Arcady, the guy who's always doing the tests on him, like as a character actor, like everything he does is funny in the movie. And he's like, sir, I'm really doing my best here. Like and I thought that there were a lot of really good moments within that really worked. I think the messy narrative for me is what really threw me off, because I'm just not accustomed to seeing that from Bong. Not that, I mean, it happens with filmmakers all the time. And part of it, like you said, Zach, might have been Warner Brothers getting too involved and being like, this is what we're doing. We have to, like, Bong, you can have 90% of your cut, but 10% has to be this, because this is what tested well. And then maybe that fucked
or
with
adapting
the
book.
Or adapting the book to specific things. So, I don't really know how much else I would have to say about the movie either.
I want your guys' thoughts on the ending, because although I do think the third act has pacing issues, I was a fan of the ending, mostly because of my personal interpretation of it, like the dream sequence and the very closing image of the film. But I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts first.
You want to take it first, Zach?
Yeah, sure. I liked the ending. I just really did not like the dream sequence. I honestly couldn't have cared for the dream sequence, only for the sake of he's talking about having nightmares and going through all this experience the whole movie, and sure, he has this vision with Toni Collette and her reprinting Mark Ruffalo, and I thought that was gonna be a Bong twist where, oh, we had a Mark Ruffalo in the bag, like we didn't care about the whole treaty with making duplicates. Like I thought that was gonna be a creative twist, and they could have taken over something, or I don't know, like just combated them a little harder. But it was just a dream, and I felt like that was a cop out to how people wake up, you know, by the end of the film, and they're like, oh, it was all a dream. I'm like, well, that he was the main antagonist of the film, and it didn't feel very earned necessarily. And to me, it still felt like the stakes were so low at that point that they had to just pull out some sequence there. It didn't really fit for me. But what did you like about
your
So
interpretation?
I enjoyed that dream sequence because the way I saw it was that in the end, we have dictator figures in our real life, and that dream sequence is almost a realistic, albeit pessimistic, viewpoint of what would really happen, of how you kill a dictator and
they just find another person.
They're gonna find another person just to replace them, and it's just the cycle is gonna continue. They're gonna copy and copy and copy, because who are the people in charge of these? It's the ruling class. It's that ruling class of, you know, people like Toni Collette. They're just gonna keep
coming back,
copying their Mark Ruffalos, and
all for sauce.
Yeah. And I think it almost kind of breaks the fourth wall in a way, with Mickey destroying the copy machine, the closing image of Mickey, because of how overly optimistic it is and how overly like happy ending movie now. I think almost Bong knows that. Bong knows that it's too much of a happy ending. And it's showing us that kind of like in a very meta, quote unquote, breaking the fourth wall way of like, this is a movie, this is an optimistic ending, but that dream, dream is the reality. And it's that play of like, in the context of the film, that's the dream, the reality is the optimistic, happy one, the movie like ending. In reality, it's the opposite. Right, and we dream and we have these optimism, and you know, not to sound like a negative Nancy, but we have these big optimistic dreams for a brighter future, but in reality, it's the dreams that Mickey has. You know,
it's really interesting. I wish that I felt that when I was watching the movie. I feel like you did a better job of explaining.
Yeah, I think you got it.
I didn't feel that watching the movie. But now that you say it like that makes sense, and it's something that I wish I felt more in the theater. You know what I mean? Like I wish it had more of a pointed approach. I like the interpretation of it though. That might actually bump up my score just based on like now that I'm like playing it back in my head. I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that Bong that's his own way of kind of tongue in cheek winking at the audience. Yeah, which I like. You had something, Zach?
Yeah, no, I guess like I can see that too. I like how you put that, and it makes sense. I think there was what prevented that from me understanding that perspective was the tone of a lot of the movie. It was juggling like how unserious they were. Like it felt like they were leaders that just kind of fell into being leaders than they were conniving and manipulative the whole time. They were certainly manipulative at points with their propaganda and like doing the late night show and doing that kind of stuff, but most of their character just felt like they were constructed as these dumb white people in charge, and like we're just gonna bring them into the promised land and we'll see what happens. Like they didn't feel like that smart, you know what I mean? Like and Bong's films are notoriously smart and sharp edge, so I felt like when they had the little sequences, like she's like, oh, I gotta make the sauce, I was like, oh, is that why they're here? Are they trying to make some kind of like spice like Dune or something? Is there something on this planet we have to mine, or is there something that we have to be here for that we can send back to Earth? Is there a bigger plan in all this that would have felt the conniving, like there's a reason we're doing all of this to create a master race? Does the sauce do that? Is something about the reason to go to this planet helping our cause? I didn't feel that part of it. But then there was even stuff like the guy in the pigeon suit. I was like, okay, I got the pigeon suit thing. I got that. I was like, we've seen that like 6 times now. Like, it's okay. Didn't really get that side of it. There's probably an undertone there of like another dunce like moment. He's following somebody, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it was the balance of the tone. I didn't know what it was going for at points with the humor. Like it wasn't, it felt like they were playing theater and playing the dunce more than the fact of what they were doing is idiotic and funny to us. It was just like, oh, these people are idiots. It's not what the situation that they're in is like funny to us. It just didn't feel like it blended certain things. But when you say stuff like that with the printing, and I see that too, because I definitely compare that to how they've led their expedition, how he was like, he lost the 3 elections and he's going into space. He still has his cult followers, and those people will come back in different forms and different shapes. So I get that part of it. And I think if they maybe stuck to that mold in other ways throughout the movie, it could have even been like higher for me. And because Bong is very good with the social classism and political conversation. But
yeah, I'm curious what his cut of the film, like the original cut, looks like. And I'm curious if it improves upon, and makes those moments like that dream sequence more impactful.
Yeah, and maybe fleshes out a little bit more too. Like even the one moment where he talks about when he loses his mom by pressing the button, like that was such a quick thing where I'm like, that was it. We're not gonna.
Yeah.
And then it plays back into the end where he's like, I don't want to hit the button, but I'm like, I kind of wish there was a little bit more there.
Right.
That we kind of faced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I almost wish, like Zach was talking about the big ensemble of it, I almost wish it felt more contained. Like Stephen Yeun's character is so one-dimensional and is just there to be an asshole, really, like the asshole friend, that like I don't even think you really need him in the movie. Like, I mean, you have it for the funny scheme in the beginning, but like there's certain characters that I just feel like don't necessarily work, while I think Bong does a really good job with those smaller characters that capture moments within the movie. Yeah, I wish it wasn't as messy as it was. I think that's my biggest criticism of it, is like it didn't feel as tight as other Bong scripts that we've seen on screen and things like that. But I don't have really much else to say. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I just want to shout out one of my favorite technical feats of the film. Was the collaboration between the cinematography and the production design. There's so many I mean, the film looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's so much incorporation of the lighting and the cinematography within the production design and vice versa. I really saw it during the dinner sequence, but the whole film, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I remember Lawrence, the cinematographer to
Lawrence Sher.
Yeah, Lawrence Sher. He talks about how sometimes the role of DP blurs and it goes into production designer, right? Because you're trying to and I think this film is a really great example of that collaboration between roles on set, because it looked great. And Yeah, that's all I have
No,
to
I
say
agree.
about
I think
that.
visually it definitely was a stand. I love the production design too.
Yeah.
Zach, do you want to talk about the production design a little bit and how you felt about it?
Yeah, sure. I thought it was well made, and it felt like an extension of the newer Alien films a little bit. Just kind of the like in Alien Romulus. I remember there was the sequences in the beginning before they're leaving to off Earth, and it felt like Alien Romulus has a darker contrast because of the horror side that they're trying to accomplish. But with the sci-fi tech, I thought this was really cool. I liked how they used this very extravagant cabin for Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette and the dining room that they had. It felt like a Bond layer to me in some points. And then we got to talk about the creepers, because the creepers are the cutest part of the movie. I mean, those guys, like little fuzzballs, I would get killed by one of those in a heartbeat. Like I would just get smothered to death by it.
They were pretty nice though.
I want to get like a plushie of it.
They should make plushies of the creepers, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I really like the bunks that they had, like the little rooms that they had for them. I thought that was well done in terms of the production design. But I mean, again, I think that technically Bong always makes something that is a standout in terms of what he's trying to do. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I don't know if anybody else says anything else, but we can go into scores if you guys are ready. Who wants to start?
I guess I'll start.
You can start.
I'm gonna give this Mickey 17 a solid 7.5.
Okay.
10.
7.5.
7.5. Zach?
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 just because. Another thing, that goes with the score. I feel like they put too much in the trailer. I was waiting for certain things to happen in the trailer, like him jumping over the head with the sword, or Ruffalo harpooning somebody with the iron. There was some stuff in the trailer that could have been left out because I think it spoiled too much. I felt like it could have been tighter. I felt like a lot more could have been developed throughout story arcs, character relationships. Relationship with Nasha could have been heavier in the beginning. They kind of just come together. I just felt like it was a little unfinished for how high quality Bong's work typically is, but it's still a good movie. I think if you're a sci-fi enthusiast, it's still worth the watch in that way.
I definitely think it's worth seeing. I'm going to kind of split the difference between the two of you. I'm going to give it a 6.5. Pattinson, for me, like I said, is one of those really great working actors where you're just seeing more and more of the layers of the kind of performer he's been. And now he's worked with so many fantastic directors in recent years, whether it's Reeves or now Bong and Nolan and the Safdies. Like he's a director's actor. And I thought this was a really good role for him to kind of play the dual roles. Like I said, Naomi Ackie, this was a different side of her that I liked, the heroine kind of aspect of her. And I thought, like I said, a lot of the supporting cast was good. I thought Stephen Yeun, unfortunately, was wasted. And Toni Collette is a pleasure to watch, as always. I thought she was great, kind of playing the Tilda Swinton role that she usually plays in other things like Snowpiercer and Okja. But so we got a 7.5, a 6, and a 6.5. Those are our scores. Let us know in the comments, what are your guys' thoughts on Mickey 17? Be sure to give this video a like. Let us know if you side more with Vinny, if you guys agree with us. I think we still all at least had an enjoyable time at the cinema. We recommend you guys check out this movie at the movie theaters. Go and represent, especially if you're a fan of Bong Joon Ho as a filmmaker. If you guys want, you guys can check out some of our other reviews. We're currently covering a bunch of stuff on television. We're doing The White Lotus. We're doing Parasite. This week, we're recording the finale of season 3 of Invincible. And then Vinny and I are going to start covering Daredevil Born Again this week. Can't wait for that. A lot of other exciting stuff upcoming. And then next week for films, Vinny's going to be covering Opus with Liz. Zach and I are going to be covering Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag. Second Soderbergh movie of the year already.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Dude works way too much. But be sure to get ready for those and check those out. And if you guys want to follow us on social media, all that stuff is below me in the video currently. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Threads. You guys can check out all the other stuff, our reels and news and other things on there as well. So just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Vinny Albano.
I'm Zach Miller.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.